Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me. The phone rang, cutting through the quiet hum of the house. I looked at the time. It was 2:37 a.m. Who in the world would be calling her this late? I wasn't in the mood for questions or to pry into things I didn't want to know, but this time, something felt different. Maybe it was the way she answered the phone. Quick, sharp, almost too eager. She didn't even glance my way as she stood up from the couch, her movements stiff and calculated. I could hear her voice as she spoke, soft at first, like she was trying to keep the conversation under control. But it wasn't the words themselves that grabbed my attention. It was the tone. She was hiding something. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't supposed to hear it, but I did. I was standing just outside the living room, listening without breathing, frozen by the words that slipped out of her mouth. "I don't need him anymore," she said. I felt the world tilt on its axis. The air around me seemed to compress, like I was suffocating. My hands went cold, my heart rate spiking. I barely dared to breathe, but I couldn't move. I stayed there, trapped in the silence, while her voice continued from the other room. "It's over, really. It has been for a while now. I just didn't know how to tell him." The words twisted in my gut. Over. She was talking about us. I had no idea what was happening, how it had gotten to this point. I'd been so focused on the routine, the daily grind, keeping the bills paid, getting through another week. I never noticed how everything around me was slowly breaking down. I heard her sigh, like she was finally letting out a breath she'd been holding in for far too long. "It's just easier this way. I don't have to pretend anymore." The sound of her voice was like a punch to the chest. Easier? What did that even mean? Easier for who? Certainly not me. She had been pretending this whole time. Pretending everything was fine. Pretending we were happy. Pretending I was enough. And the next part. Oh, that's when the floor really fell out from under me. I've already made my choice. I've been seeing him for a while now. He's everything Greg is not. I almost dropped to my knees. He? Who? Who was this man? I had no idea who she was talking about. What had I missed? How long had this been happening behind my back? But I wasn't going to make the mistake of rushing in and confronting her. No, I had to think. I had to keep my calm. If I ran in there and demanded answers, I would be the fool. But that didn't mean I could just ignore it either. I had to know everything, every little detail that had been hidden from me. I had to know who this him was. I quietly retreated from the doorway, not making a sound. I needed space to think, but my mind was on fire. The silence in the house was suffocating, and I couldn't escape the overwhelming reality that the woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd spent years with, had been lying to me for who knows how long. For the next few days, I didn't say a word to her about what I'd overheard. I stayed in the background, observing, watching every little thing she did. I noticed the small changes, how she no longer asked about my day, how she barely looked me in the eye, how she stopped touching me altogether. The woman I had known for years had become a stranger to me. Then, one night, I decided to take a walk. I needed some air to clear my head. I walked down the familiar street near our house, a path I'd walked 1,000 times. But tonight, everything felt different. I wasn't just a man walking alone. I was a man who had lost his place in the world. A man who had been tossed aside, not even knowing when it started. I kept thinking about the conversation I overheard. She didn't need me anymore. She had found someone else, someone better. And I had been left behind. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what I found when I returned home. The front door was unlocked. Now, I'm not the type to jump to conclusions, but I always make sure to lock the door when I leave. But tonight, it was ajar, just a crack. I froze. As I stepped inside, I saw a shadow move across the kitchen. My blood ran cold. Someone was here. Then, I heard her voice, and it wasn't just her. It was him. "Don't worry," she said, almost in a whisper. "He's not going to do anything. He'll be gone soon enough. It's just easier this way. I don't want to hurt him, but he won't let go." The words pierced me. I stood there, paralyzed, listening as they spoke. It was clear now, there was no pretending anymore. The man who had been in my life for years wasn't going to be part of my future. I was just the guy she'd been keeping around for convenience, and when she had enough of me, she was moving on. But the truth that hit me hardest was this. I wasn't just the guy who got left behind. I was the guy who had been replaced. I had been living a lie, and now the truth had come crashing down on me. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was everything. Every little moment we had shared, every memory, every plan, every dream we had built together. It was all a lie. I didn't wait to confront them. I didn't scream or shout. I didn't demand answers. No, I just did what I knew I had to do. I vanished. I left that night, without saying a word to either of them. I didn't even pack a bag. I just walked out the door and disappeared into the night, leaving behind a life that I thought was mine. But little did I know, this was just the beginning. The truth that emerged in the days that followed, well, that's when everything really blew up. The next morning, I barely slept. I had no intention of facing her, no idea how to even begin to unravel the mess that had formed between us. I left before she woke up. The car keys were already in my hand before I even thought about it, and I didn't look back as I walked out of the house. But the whole day, my mind kept drifting back to one thought. How could she do this to me? I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was going on. Something bigger than just an affair, something deeper. I started paying attention to every detail I had ignored before. The subtle way she glanced at her phone, the coldness that had settled into her voice when we spoke. Later that evening, I had a strange urge to check her computer. No reason, really. I wasn't a snooper by nature, but I felt like I was being driven by something beyond just curiosity, as if something was pushing me to connect the dots. I found it, hidden in a folder labeled Private, an email thread that had been deleted from her inbox. It was all there, a history of her and someone else, going back months. It was a series of messages, and each one sent chills through my spine. The man, his name was Ethan, had been in her life long before I ever realized. The emails weren't just casual. They were intimate. Planning trips, private jokes, shared confessions about things she had never once told me. As I scrolled through the messages, my heart sank further. She had been sharing parts of herself with him that she had kept hidden from me. A part of her that I had never even known existed. My mind raced. What was I doing? Why hadn't I noticed this? All these years, I thought I was the person she could turn to, the person who knew her better than anyone. But here it was, proof that I had been living in the shadow of a version of her I never knew. That's when I saw it. One of the last messages she had sent to Ethan read, "I've decided. I'm going to tell Greg that it's over. We can't keep pretending anymore. It's time. I've made my choice, and I'm ready to start the next chapter with you." My mind went blank. This wasn't just some affair. It was a whole secret life, and I was nothing more than the backdrop. It had been going on for months, and I hadn't noticed. I wasn't just her husband in this scenario. I was the fool who had been kept in the dark. I had to get out. I couldn't face her. Not like this. Not with this knowledge in my head. I grabbed my coat, left the apartment, and drove aimlessly for hours. My thoughts were spinning, trying to process the betrayal, the lies, the love I thought we shared. But nothing made sense anymore. I drove for hours, not knowing where I was going, not caring, just needing to escape. The road was a blur, and with each mile I put between myself and home, the suffocating weight of what I had discovered seemed to lift slightly. But only slightly. I tried to ignore the questions running through my head. How long had this been going on? Who was Ethan? What did I miss? Every second I spent away from her was another moment of raw confusion and pain, and the longer I stayed away, the clearer it became that I was on my own. I had never felt so alone. Eventually, I found myself at the edge of the city, parked on a desolate street with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. I kept seeing her face, the woman I had spent nearly a decade with, the woman I thought I knew, now an unfamiliar stranger in my eyes. I didn't return home that night. I couldn't. It was the first time in years I felt the need to get away, to breathe. But the next morning, I knew I had to face it. I couldn't keep running. I had to know what was really going on, who this Ethan guy was, and what part of our life had been fake. I returned home later that day. The house was empty, which only added to the discomfort swirling in my chest. It was the first time in what felt like forever that the silence in the house felt so permanent. I could tell she wasn't there. Maybe she was still at work, or maybe she was meeting him. I had no idea anymore. But something felt off. The moment I stepped inside, I noticed the door to the spare room was ajar. I hadn't opened that room in ages. My heart skipped a beat. Why was it open now? Curiosity, or maybe desperation, took over. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, the curtains drawn tight. But what caught my attention wasn't the dust or the forgotten boxes. It was the unmistakable smell of cologne. Ethan's cologne. I could smell it. Strong, unmistakable, almost overpowering. I didn't need to check the label on the bottle sitting on the desk. I didn't even need to see the items strewn across the bed, photos, receipts, a stack of letters with her handwriting on them. I wanted to turn and leave, but I couldn't. It was like I had been pulled into the web of my own downfall. I moved closer to the bed, my hands shaking as I picked up a crumpled receipt. The date on it was from just 2 weeks ago. The location? A hotel. My stomach twisted. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't prepared for the weight of this revelation, but the truth was right there, staring me in the face. They had been meeting here, in our house, while I was at work. Or worse, while I was pretending everything was fine. I felt my anger bubble up, but it wasn't the anger I thought I'd feel. It wasn't rage or fury. It was the quiet devastation of knowing that the woman I loved had made a life with someone else in the shadows. As I was about to leave, something caught my eye. A small notebook, tucked under the pillow. My hands trembled as I picked it up and opened it. The pages were filled with notes, most of them written by Sophia. I could see her thoughts unraveling in black ink. I'm going to tell Greg today. He doesn't know yet, but I'm going to break the news to him. I can't keep lying. But Ethan, he's different. He makes me feel alive. Greg doesn't see me anymore. It's not his fault, but I'm done pretending. Each word felt like a dagger. I wanted to scream, to tear the pages to pieces, but I stood frozen, reading over and over again, trying to understand how this happened, how I was so blind. Then I read something that made my blood run cold. Ethan says he's ready. He wants me to move in with him. He's not like Greg. He sees me. He loves me. Those words. He loves me. It was as if everything about our life had been reduced to nothing more than a shadow. A lie. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at those words. I was suffocating in the weight of it all. But then, the door creaked open. I didn't move. I didn't know how to. Sophia stepped inside, her face lighting up with surprise when she saw me sitting on the bed, holding the notebook. For a brief moment, it looked like she was going to say something. But she didn't. She just stood there, her expression faltering as the silence between us grew heavier. And then, she spoke. Gregor, she whispered, her voice soft. I didn't mean for you to find this. I didn't know how to respond. The words that wanted to come out were lost. How could I even begin to ask the questions swirling in my head? How could I even look at her, knowing everything I had just learned? She sat down next to me, her eyes brimming with tears. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, her voice shaking. I couldn't keep pretending. I couldn't keep living in a marriage that wasn't real anymore. I wanted to scream, to shout at her, but I couldn't. I just felt numb. And in that moment, I made a choice. I stood up, walked to the door, and left without saying another word. I wasn't going to fight for her. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I was done. The truth was out. And now, I was going to disappear. But what I didn't know was that Sophia wasn't going to let me go so easily. I didn't know where I was going when I left that day. I didn't know what I was running from, or what I was running to. But I drove. And I didn't stop until the car had taken me to a small motel on the edge of town. I locked the door behind me, sat on the bed, and let the silence wash over me. It felt surreal, like I had stepped into some kind of alternate reality. I kept trying to tell myself this was just a bad dream, that I'd wake up and everything would be fine. But it wasn't. It was real, and the weight of it was suffocating. The next morning, I woke up to a new reality. I had been awake for hours, sitting in that small, lonely room, trying to make sense of it all. But there was something I hadn't counted on, the one thing I couldn't escape. My phone buzzed. I didn't want to answer it. I didn't want to hear her voice, but curiosity got the best of me. I picked up the phone, and there it was, a text from Sophia. Where are you? We need to talk. I stared at the screen. My heart beat faster, my palms sweaty. This wasn't just a message. This was her trying to reel me back in, trying to make me come home, to face her and the mess she'd created. I hesitated. I thought about ignoring it, about deleting the message and moving on. But there was a part of me, some small, stupid part, that wanted to know what she had to say. What kind of excuse would she give me this time? I typed a response. Why? So you can tell me more lies? More about how everything I thought we had was a lie. It only took a few moments before her reply came in. I never meant for it to happen this way. Greg, please. You don't understand. I'm sorry, but I can't keep pretending anymore. We have to talk. Her words were like a slap in the face. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry because she had been caught. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was that she was still trying to manipulate me into believing she was the victim here. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I tossed the phone on the bed, burying my face in my hands. What kind of person does this? What kind of wife cheats on her husband and thinks she can just make it go away with a text message? But I couldn't help it. I couldn't resist. I knew I had to see her. I had to hear her side of the story, even though I already knew how it would end. So I drove back. When I got home, everything felt wrong. The house was quiet, too quiet. The place that had once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a prison. I stepped inside, my heart pounding in my chest, and there she was, standing at the kitchen counter, like she was waiting for me. She didn't look surprised to see me. In fact, she seemed almost relieved, like she had been expecting me to come back. "Gregor," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to find out this way. I didn't want to hurt you. I just didn't know how to fix things between us." I couldn't speak at first. The words wouldn't come. All I could do was stand there, looking at her, my wife, the woman I thought I knew, and feel like a complete stranger in my own home. "I don't know when it happened," she continued, her eyes filling with tears. "It started with small things I ignored. But then I met Ethan, and it was like everything changed. He listened to me, Greg. He actually listened." I swallowed hard. "Ethan, the man who had taken everything from me. You've been lying to me," I said, finally finding my voice. "For months. And you think you can just say sorry and make it all better? I'm not stupid, Sophia. I know exactly what's been going on." Her eyes shifted, avoiding mine. She opened her mouth to say something, but the words wouldn't come. The silence between us grew thick, suffocating. I could feel the weight of everything crashing down on me. It wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was the fact that she had been living two lives, one with me and one with him. And I was just the fool who didn't see it. "I want a divorce," I said, my voice steady, despite the storm inside me. She looked up at me, shocked. "What? Greg?" "No," I cut her off. "I don't want to hear it. You've already made your choice. You've already moved on. I don't need to be a part of this anymore." And just like that, I knew. I wasn't going to fight for this marriage. I wasn't going to beg for her to come back. I was done. But as I turned to leave, she called out to me. "Wait. Greg, please. Don't leave like this. We can fix this. We can start over." But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Because what she didn't know was that it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me. And I was done being the last person to find out the truth. The text I received wasn't just a message. It was the beginning of everything unraveling. But it didn't end there. What came next would turn everything I thought I knew upside down. The door slammed behind me as I left, but I didn't feel the relief I expected. If anything, I felt hollow. I had walked away from my marriage, but all I could think about was one thing. How long had she been planning this? The car ride felt like a blur. I kept replaying her words in my head. "We can fix this." How could she say that? After everything that had happened, how could she think I'd want to fix anything with her? It was clear she had already made her choice, and it wasn't me. I pulled over at a small diner on the outskirts of town, not caring where I was. I just needed a moment to breathe, to try and get my mind together. The waitress brought me a cup of coffee, and I just stared at the black liquid, as if it could somehow help me make sense of everything. But the phone buzzed in my pocket, and I felt the world tilt again. It was her. I didn't want to answer it. I didn't want to hear any more apologies or explanations. But there was something pulling me in, something making my hand reach for the phone before I could stop it. "Greg?" Her voice was shaky, filled with a desperate sort of calmness that set me on edge. I didn't say anything. I just listened. "I can't stop thinking about you," she continued. "I know I hurt you. I know. I've been terrible. But I can't lose you. Please, just come home. We'll fix it, I swear. It's not too late." I clenched my jaw, but still, I said nothing. Every word she spoke only dug the knife deeper. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I heard something. A voice in the background. A man's voice. It was Ethan's voice. My stomach dropped. I didn't even need to hear the words clearly. I could hear the intimacy in his tone, the familiarity. It was like he was right there with her, as if they were living a life I never even knew about. "Stop," I muttered, before hanging up the phone. I couldn't do it. I couldn't hear her beg. I couldn't hear him in the background, acting like nothing had ever happened. I stood up, leaving the coffee behind. The waitress gave me a concerned look, but I didn't care. I wasn't looking for comfort anymore. The truth was, I had been living a lie. And now, it was time for me to take control. I wasn't going to be the one left in the dark anymore. I don't know how long I stood outside that diner, but when I finally pulled myself together, I made one decision. I wasn't going back to her. But I wasn't going to just disappear quietly either. I needed to know everything. And that would require more than just walking away. I didn't know where to go after hanging up on her. There were no clear answers, no place where I could find peace. But I couldn't go back to that house, to that life. I needed to know the truth, all of it, before I could even begin to understand what had happened. I spent the next few days in a daze. I couldn't shake the image of her voice, that sound in the background, the quiet intimacy she shared with him. Ethan. The name echoed in my mind like a drumbeat, relentless and suffocating. But then, a message popped up on my phone. It wasn't from Sophia. It wasn't even from a friend or a family member. It was from an unknown number. You don't know me, but I think you should know something. My heart skipped a beat. I stared at the screen, confused. Who was this? I almost didn't respond, but curiosity won over. Who is this? I typed back, my fingers trembling as I pressed send. The reply came almost instantly. You don't know me, but I know Sophia. I've seen what's been going on between her and Ethan. You should know that they've been more than just friends for a while. They've been planning something, and it's not good. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just some random person making assumptions. They were talking about things I hadn't even known about. My hands shook as I read the message over and over again, each word adding another layer of dread to the pit in my stomach. What do you mean? I typed back, but this time I didn't wait for a reply. I couldn't. I needed answers, and fast. A few minutes later, the message came through again. This time, it was more direct. I don't know the details, but Ethan is involved in more than just the affair. He's been helping Sophia with something bigger, something that could change everything. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. I couldn't breathe. What could be bigger than an affair? What was she involved in? Before I could even begin to process what this message meant, the phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't a text. It was a video. My heart pounded as I pressed play, the screen flickering to life. And there she was, Sophia, standing in front of a table, talking to Ethan. The quality of the video was poor, but it was clear enough. They were discussing something serious. Once we're done with Greg, it'll be easier to move on. Sophia's voice came through, sounding almost cold. We'll have everything we need. Ethan's reply was muffled, but I could still make out a few words. I've made the arrangements. It'll all be over soon. I felt like the world was spinning around me. This wasn't just about a broken marriage. There was something much darker at play, and I had no idea how deep it went. I immediately texted back, demanding answers, but no response came. My thoughts raced. What had I gotten myself into? The life I thought I understood was a web of deceit, and I was stuck in the middle of it. I had to get to the bottom of this, and I needed to act fast, before I became the last person to find out the truth about everything. The video haunted me for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sophia's face, cold, calculating, and so incredibly far from the woman I had loved. She was talking about me, about ending things, about moving on with Ethan. But that wasn't all. There was something else, something far more sinister behind those words. We'll have everything we need, she had said. What did that even mean? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. I needed to know more. I had to find out exactly what they were planning. I couldn't go to the police yet. I didn't even have proof of anything concrete. All I had was a video, a strange text, and my gut telling me that something was terribly wrong. So, I did what any person would do when they feel like the walls are closing in. I followed her. I knew it was risky, but what other choice did I have? I had to find answers, no matter what. I waited until late that night, the same night she said she would be working late at the office. I'd heard that excuse more times than I could count, but this time, I wasn't going to sit idly by. I followed her out of the house, keeping my distance as she drove through the city. She didn't notice me, and I couldn't help but feel a sick satisfaction in that, like I was finally taking control of something. The drive led us to a secluded area near the outskirts of town, where a small, unmarked building sat in the shadows. I could barely make out the words on the sign, but they didn't matter. I wasn't interested in the building itself. I was interested in what was happening inside. Sophia pulled into the parking lot, and got out of the car. I kept a safe distance, watching as she disappeared inside. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but what I saw next completely shattered any remnants of doubt I still had. Out of the shadows stepped Ethan, walking toward the building with a sense of purpose. He didn't see me, he couldn't, but it didn't matter. The sight of them together, entering that building, confirmed everything I had feared. This wasn't just about cheating. This was something bigger, something darker, and I was getting too close. I waited for what felt like hours, but I couldn't stay forever. I had to know what was going on, but I didn't have the strength to confront her, not yet. Not until I had more information. When I finally left, I felt like I was walking through a fog. My mind raced with questions, but none of them had answers. I wasn't sure what to do with this new knowledge. Should I confront her? Should I tell Ethan that I knew? I didn't know how far I should push, or how much danger I was putting myself in by continuing this investigation. All I knew was that I couldn't turn back now. I had to figure out what they were up to, and I had to do it before it was too late. I didn't know how much longer I could keep going like this. The weeks dragged on, each day feeling heavier than the last. But something inside me snapped the moment I found out just how deep Sophia's betrayal went. I wasn't just her husband. I wasn't just the man she was lying to. I was the pawn in a game that had already been decided before I even realized it. The building, the secret meetings, the hushed conversations with Ethan. It all made sense now. They weren't just having an affair. They were involved in something far bigger, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I spent the next few days quietly gathering information. I hacked into the emails I knew Sophia thought were secure, using the same methods I had for work. I couldn't let her have the upper hand anymore. She had been planning this for months. And now, it was my turn to take control. Through the emails, I learned the full extent of what was happening. Sophia and Ethan weren't just planning to destroy our marriage. They had been involved in a larger scheme to take over a company I had worked for, a company I had helped build. They were trying to steal intellectual property, to sell it off to the highest bidder. The weight of it all nearly crushed me. But I was no longer the same person who had been blind to everything. I had the evidence, and it was time to make them pay for what they'd done. Not just for the affair, but for everything. They had underestimated me. They thought I was weak. But I wasn't. I contacted the company's legal team anonymously, sending them the proof I had gathered. It didn't take long for the news to break. Sophia and Ethan's plan was exposed for everyone to see. The company filed a lawsuit, and the authorities got involved. The once promising future they had so carefully constructed together began to crumble, piece by piece. And as I watched everything fall apart, something inside me started to heal. I didn't want revenge for the sake of revenge. What I wanted was closure. I wanted the truth to be known, and I wanted to move on from the life she had stolen from me. The final moment came when I received a call from Sophia. Her voice, once so familiar, now sounded distant, almost unrecognizable. She begged me to come back, to fix what we had, but I was already done. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. "I never wanted to hurt you," she cried. "Please, Greg. I'm sorry." I didn't say anything at first. I didn't need to. The truth had already spoken for me. And in that moment, I finally understood that the best revenge was not to fight, not to get pulled back into her web of lies. It was to walk away, to be free. "I'm done, Sophia," I said, my voice steady calm. "You've made your choice. And so have I." I hung up the phone for the last time and walked away from that life. It wasn't easy. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And as I stepped into my new life, one where I no longer had to be haunted by the past, I realized something. I had not only taken back my freedom, but I had also finally found the peace I had been searching for. Sophia and Ethan? Their empire crumbled. What they thought they'd stolen from me was nothing compared to the one thing they could never take: my dignity. Please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. I read them all.